The November 2022 U.S. midterm election will challenge the Democrat Party's slim House majority. This is Andrew Stotts of A. Stotts Investment Research. Let's get into it. This is our starting point. Here you can see I've taken consumer prices, house prices, and stock prices and rebased them back to 100 as of January 2000. I've rebased them to put them on similar terms, and here we can see that CPI from 100 is now up to 164, and housing prices up to 274, and stock prices are up to 534. This is a way of comparing them, and you can see, of course, that stock prices are through the roof. Now let's put this in context. I'm going to get rid of that consumer price line and instead look at stock prices and home prices in relation to consumer prices. And that's where we go right here. We start off at a one-for-one relationship. And here you can see the gray line is consumer price, imagining that we set it fixed. And then you can see the house prices that went above. And you can see that stock prices collapsed below on 2 occasions and then is now way above. In fact, in October 2006, housing prices were 54% higher than CPI, and now they're about 67% higher than CPI. So in other words, we're taking into consideration general price rises in the economy. This is darn high. In fact, that's higher than what it was pre-2008 crisis. And this amount that we can see right at this point, this acceleration really has a lot to do with interest rates being so close to zero. In fact, if you're borrowing right now for a house loan, during that period of time, you're probably getting it for about 3%, which is really almost free money, particularly when you consider the fact that you also get some tax incentives for that. The stock market is now 226% above the CPI increase. So the battleground is the United States House of Representatives, and there it is. There's 435 seats in the House. Last election was November 3rd, 2020, and the next election is November 8th, 2022. Let's see the breakdown here. We can see that Democrats hold an extremely thin majority. You've got 220 seats controlled by Democrats and 213 controlled by Republicans. 1 seat is vacant right now. Now, in the U.S. 2020 census, the main gainer compared to 2010 census was Texas. Remember that every 10 years, America will count the population in order to give equal representation. And we can see that that Florida, North Carolina, Colorado, Montana, and Oregon all gained 1 seat. And California, probably for the first time ever, lost a seat. And New York also lost a seat. Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois all lost a seat. For those people who aren't familiar with America, you could say that this area right here is what we call the Rust Belt. And that is exactly where I came from. I grew up in Ohio before I moved to Thailand. And these states have been losing power. In fact, that's part of where Trump went to gain his voters, was those places that were losing a lot of representation. Now, let's go back in time. Let's go back to 1980. I, in fact, was just in high school in 1980. And basically, what we can do is look at the population change from 1980, what we're talking about here, up to this latest census, which was completed in 2020. And what can we see? These are the states with rising power. You can see that Texas grew by 104.8%, then Florida, California, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. Now you can see that California grew, but not in the last 10 years where they actually lost seats. And what does that mean? What that means is that the seats in the House that these states got grew by about 32.5%. Now let's look at the other states, the ones that were losing the most over that time. And here what we can see is the population change in the losing states has been about 14%, about 13.5%, with some states over this period, right? We're talking about a 40-year period, only gaining about 9% in Ohio, 8% in Michigan. I mean, it is tough times there. And if we look at what happens when you grow slowly in America, when the whole population is growing, you're going to lose representation. You're going to lose seats in the House. And here you can see, on average, these states lost 24% of the seats in the House that they previously had. Remember that the House of Representatives is elected by the population. It's not state as in Senate. So let's try to put this into a map format. And here I've created this map. In fact, if you ever want to create a map, I would highly recommend this website, mapchart.net. Made it very easy. And here I could identify the states that had the rising power since 1980. That's 40 years. And generally what we could say is that it's kind of in the South and the Southwest. But what we can also see is that the states that lost power are New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. This, again, Rust Belt from Detroit back to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, that area we call the Rust Belt. And you can see that this is an area that has just lost a lot of representation. And in fact, the East Coast has actually picked up some, and the West Coast has also picked up some in California. So what's the key point here? On November 8th, 2020, U.S. voters will elect their 435 House representatives. Democrats hold a slim 220-seat majority against the Republicans' 213. And the census shows that Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Colorado, Montana, and Oregon have gained seats, and Midwest states have been losing seats for decades. In fact, what we also saw was that California lost a seat for the first time. November 2022 U.S. midterm election is going to challenge the Democrat Party's slim House majority.